Apu is gone. Are you a fan of The Simpsons? I guess their ratings are still really good. I saw some tweet that said The Simpsons, Family Guy, and Bob's Burgers are getting like equal ratings, which is crazy to me because The Simpsons, apparently, I got this Cinema Blend article, airing its 30th season. I haven't watched The Simpsons in like a couple decades. Like, that's really crazy to me, okay? And it's also my understanding that the ratings, not like the viewership numbers, but like the rating in terms of how much people like it, like, 1 out of 10, has dropped dramatically since around season 9 or 10. I don't watch Simpsons, but I will comment on the Apu controversy. All right, for those that aren't familiar, The Simpsons is apparently getting rid of Apu following a backlash. The Simpsons is currently airing its 30th season on Fox. As one might expect, not all of the stories and characters covered over the span of 3 decades have gone over with fans, and there's been no backlash quite like that surrounding Apu Nahasapima Petalon. The convenience store owner, voiced by Hank Azaria, has been the center of controversy. Many find him to be an inaccurate and even offensive portrayal of Indian Americans in the U.S. Well, it now looks like The Simpsons is taking the drastic step of removing Apu. And my understanding is that they're not going to kill him off or anything. He's just gone. He's going to go away. Does that mean they're never going to go to the Quickie Mart again? Here's what's interesting to me about this is that it seems like selective outrage. Because there's a bunch of characters on The Simpsons who are stereotypical or offensive. Most notably, Bumblebee Man. I imagine most of you have seen The Simpsons. Why is it that Apu, who may, embody some stereotypical characteristics of an Indian person, why is he more offensive than Bumblebee Man? Bumblebee Man is a slapstick Mexican guy dressed like a bumblebee who's constantly speaking Spanish and saying like ay 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 and oh Dios mío and things like that. He's often the butt of jokes, and it is a direct caricature of like Mexican comedy. They're literally they actually have a character on The Simpsons who is Mexican, who is just constantly being pushed around, falling down, injuring themselves, and then saying ay 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 or something. Apu is a guy who runs a successful business. They gave him an episode where he explains why he's vegan. And they actually show in one episode parts of his faith. And look, while I understand it might not be 100% accurate, the point I'm trying to make is they're killing off Apu because it's a controversy, yet they have other characters who are literally meant to be caricatures that deride or insult a culture. Here's what I see when I see Apu on The Simpsons. And I'm not Indian, so I'm not saying the opinions of others is invalid. I'll just give you my thoughts as somebody who's not an Indian. I didn't ever think of Apu as as being disrespectful to Indian culture or anything. He's just a guy. He runs a successful business. He has a family. His family, they have a bunch of kids. I never looked down on Indian people or assumed the cartoon was real. And look, there's a bigger problem here. While I understand why things are offensive, and maybe we shouldn't make characters that are meant to just deride a specific culture, I don't think Apu is doing that. I think there's an issue here that what's the alternative? Is The Simpsons just going to get rid of anybody who's not yellow? I don't want to say white, although it's presumably The Simpsons are white people, but their skin is yellow. Look, they get rid of Apu, and now it's just a ton of white people? Like, do you want diversity in your show? Because Apu wasn't actually a bad depiction of an Indian person from, like... Look, obviously Indian people are going to have a stronger opinion on this than I am, and I'll defer to their opinion more so than, listen to them more than you listen to me. I'm not Indian, I don't know. But the point I'm trying to make is, Bumblebee Man is literally just making fun of this guy. He's always falling down and getting hurt. Apu is a guy who runs a business, successful entrepreneur. Look. Well, let's read a little bit more from the story. They say, the news comes from producer Adi Shankar, who you may remember launched a contest back in May for somebody to write an episode that fixes aspects of Apu's characterization that have proved problematic. There's that dog whistle there for the far left, problematic. Shankar is not connected to The Simpsons, but he nevertheless learned the show is apparently getting rid of Apu. Here's how he described the situation. He said, I've got some disheartening news back. That I've verified from multiple sources now they're going to drop the Apu character altogether. They aren't going to make a big deal out of it or anything like that, but they'll drop him altogether just to avoid the controversy. Instead of attempting to remedy the problem and tweak Apu's characterization, Adi Shankar reports to IndianWire that Apu's elimination has been confirmed, if not officially announced by The Simpsons or Fox. His comments that the producers aren't going to make a big deal out of dropping Apu at least make it likely that Apu won't be killed off a la Maud Flanders. That said, Maud was killed due to a dispute with the voice actress, and Hank Azaria certainly isn't going anywhere. The Simpsons attempted to address the controversy that largely arose after the release of the documentary called The Problem with Apu that highlighted what many found offensive about the character. But it wasn't effective in stopping any backlash. Hank Azaria himself spoke up with an idea of how The Simpsons could change now that his eyes have been opened. Azaria suggested that there should be Indian and South Asian writers in the room at The Simpsons, then said that he's perfectly willing and happy to step aside or help transition Apu into something new. That will evidently not be the case. Adi Shankar has weighed in on whether he believes removing Apu from the show was the right move, and he argues that it was a mistake, saying this, and I'm going to say right now, smart guy right here. He said, if you are a show about cultural commentary, and you are too afraid to comment on the culture, especially when it's a component of the culture you had a hand in creating, then you are a show about cowardice. It's not a step forward or a step backwards. It's just a massive step sideways. After having read all of these wonderful scripts, I feel like sidestepping the issue doesn't solve it, when the whole purpose of art, I would argue, is to bring us together. Except it's not The Simpsons' fault. It's not Shankar's fault. It's not Hank Azaria's fault. The problem is, right now in our culture, there is a tiny fraction of people who shriek at everything and demand things, and people just give in. The other day I talked about Michael Avenatti. Now some of you may have popped in because you like The Simpsons, you know nothing about Avenatti. Michael Avenatti is a lawyer. He's saying he might run in 2020 against Trump, but he recently said that white men have to stand up and call out, bigotry and racism from white men. And I said right there, he just lost. He just lost because the average American doesn't like identitarianism. Okay, a lot of people argue with me over what that word means, but identitarianism literally just means policy based on identity, government based on identity. It's a couple different definitions, but the general idea is like libertarianism is a system that has liberty at its root, and identitarianism has identity at its root. Do we want to be a nation where a small fringe group of wealthy white people, yes, progressive activists in this country are overwhelmingly white and wealthy according to YouGov data and a report produced by More in Common, a center-left think tank. Progressives are predominantly wealthy white people, and what they do is they get up in arms and demand The Simpsons make the change, and then The Simpsons does. Admittedly, I don't watch The Simpsons anymore. I'm just sick and tired of seeing people be bullied, pushed around, because people who aren't even, the minority that's being targeted are complaining about the racism targeting that minority group. The weirdest thing is you go on Twitter and you see a plethora of wealthy white people or upper middle class white people complaining about racism, and they're calling non-white people white supremacists. Like, this is what's really funny about the idea of white privilege is that the people who are most privileged are the wealthy white progressives who are calling the minorities white supremacists and using their wealth and privilege to condemn minorities. Like, how many times have they said Candace Owens is a white supremacist? She's just a black conservative. She's not a white supremacist. You guys need to grow up. Back to the story. I digress. The original goal for Adi Shankar's script contest was for Fox to produce the winning script for the show. Shankar has found what he considers the perfect script to do justice to Apu. The apparent removal of the character makes the production of the script as a canon episode of The Simpsons unlikely. In the winning script, Apu becomes a thriving businessman, moving on from his status as an owner of a single convenience store. Look, and that sounds great, but I gotta say, why are we gonna degrade someone because they own a single convenience store? Are you kidding me? Apu owns his own business. He owns a convenience store, and it's not a rinky-dink little bodega like we see in New York. He's got his own building. He's got a parking lot. It's really nice. Okay, so it's another thing that's frustrating to me is that this idea that certain jobs are not worthy of respect or dignity. And it's funny because it's not the right that has an issue with people being plumbers or owning a convenience store. No, it's the left. The left predominantly is the young people who want to be the elites who are going to college to get special jobs, who are then complaining that Apu is somewhat lesser because he owns his own business but not big enough. Shouldn't you be happy? That's a good thing. No matter what your job is, you deserve respect for doing that job. If it's a job that needs to be done, obviously, black market jobs, well, let's have a conversation about that later. The point is, the way they frame it, like Apu wasn't good enough because he owns a single store, a convenience store, to me is crazy. I don't know any young people or, progressives who own their own convenience store. I got a ton of respect for people who run their own shop. It's a hard thing to do to run your own business. And that's why I think, I understand this documentary talking about how Apu, made things hard for people because it was so popular. I just think we have to recognize, just because there's a character, or even in the real world, somebody who's not doing something glamorous like running a think tank, the CEO of a major corporation or owning multiple convenience stores, means they're undeserving of respect, or somehow we're degrading the image of them. They say, Apu's absence from The Simpsons moving forward doesn't mean the script will never be produced, however. Adi Shankar is working to produce the script through his YouTube page, Bootleg Universe. We'll have to wait and see, and if and when this Apu script makes it to the small screen. If you're a Simpsons fans, you can catch new episodes of the series. There are plenty of you. Yeah, you know what? I'm not a fan of The Simpsons. I don't watch Simpsons anymore. Admittedly, on like FXX, they run Simpsons all day. And I'll watch the old episodes of the reruns. I haven't watched an episode past like season 12 probably. I don't even know what's going on. So look, I'm not somebody who watches the show. They're going to cater to their audience, but I don't think this is their audience. I think this is another case of a big business bending over backwards to like 10 people. Like, how many people are actually upset about Apu? A lot, probably. Relative to how many people watch The Simpsons? Probably not that much. Right. Anyway, that's it. Apu's gone. This is an image of the future. It's going to keep happening. We're going to keep seeing people bend over backwards because they catch a couple vocal activists. Think about it. If you're on Twitter and 50 people are tweeting at you, people are swayed by that because that seems like a lot. But it really isn't. It really is not. These videos I get on YouTube, I'm getting thousands of comments. I'm getting tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of views, okay? So when 50 people go on Twitter and start insulting me and making fun of me, does that bother me? No, I ignore them. I just say, yeah, great. You want to criticize me? I'm all ears. You want to say dumb things about me and lie? I'm not going to listen. I can't believe a substantial portion of the Simpsons audience actually cared about any of this. But you know what? That's the future. Everyone's going to bend over backwards for whatever group. It's like Fahrenheit 451. Go read it if you didn't. I've got one more story coming up. This time, this is an interesting story as a post to Medium saying that we must call out toxic femininity. And I think it's really interesting because people have tried to define it. So stick around. That video will be up in a few minutes.